Good afternoon, everyone. Um, so, what I want to talk about today is cross-border fundraising. And so, this is going out to mainly all the people who are, our clients and friends who are own their own businesses. They're small companies, family-owned companies. They're all based in whether it be the Caribbean or Latin America. And we're constantly coming across the situation where a lot of people don't really understand how to raise money, or just some of the basic things that you need to know when you're trying to raise money in the places like the United States and Canada that have a lot of capital for investment. Now, we all see in the press, in the financial press, all the fantastic things going on here in the U.S. economy, in the U.S. country, the country of the United States, and in Canada and places like this, in the U.K. But when you're a small, family-owned, cross-border company, and when I say cross-border, you're not necessarily an American company or a Canadian company, but your clients are in the U.S. or Canada or elsewhere in the world, for that matter. It doesn't, matter where your clients are. When you're trying to raise money in the U.S. and you're not actually based here, it's a little bit different when you are when you're an SME. Let's just use the term SME for now. SMEs, of course, when you're fundraising, we have to look at the world first as in the regulated financial world and in the unregulated financial world. And I think there's a little bit of confusion. Um, as I was saying, in the press, we see companies of all shapes and sizes doing all sorts of things, and certainly there is a vast amount of large cross-border financing and work and transactions that go on that is relatively non-controversial, and also larger companies with hundreds of millions of dollars and those types of resources will find like, Jonathan, what are you talking about? But let's take a family that has a $30 million project in a Latin American country. Sure, you do business in the United States and Europe and some in Asia as well, but the way the banking system will see you, and certainly the way your potential investors will be able to deal with you, there's going to be some issues. And the reason that these issues come about is because the world is divided into, we're going to try to keep it simple, into the regulated category, which is those who are regulated, and those who are not regulated. So we all know that a lot of private placements go down. A lot of them quite often are cross-border. But if you look closely, in a lot of cases, the people who easily do cross-border private placement deals are large corporations or regulated financial institutions, are really the general partners or the managers behind the financing. When you're a small cross-border SME, family-owned, closely held business, and you want to raise capital cross-border, you do have to think about, will my investors actually be able to invest in my venture? And you might have a joint venture or sort of an intermediary platform, holding platform to take in investment in the Caribbean somewhere. And so, of course, we work a lot with Barbados. And so, basically, if you want to take in investment from investors who, by and large, many, if not the majority of investors in the world today, they all have um, regulated platforms, which is basically essentially they either have their funds in private banks, or they have their own private investment funds, or some form of regulated vehicle that they use to protect themselves, their families, and their wealth. And if you're going to raise capital from these people, because of course these types of investors, like anyone else, are looking for cross-border investment, then essentially, it's a little bit hot out here, then essentially you have to take into account that they are regulated, and if you are not, then that is going to cause a problem. Actually, quite often what we've seen is that the investor is gun-ho, wants to do the project, but ultimately is told by his compliance department or the compliance department of the private bank or whoever it is that, yeah, no, you can't do that, or if you do that, that's going to cause us a lot of problems because we see this as a very high risk situation. And so this is something that you need to think of ahead of time. So very simply, my cross-border families and SMEs and business owners, if you're going to raise cross-border capital, one of the first things you're going to look at is basically whether you have a regulated platform of your own to facilitate engaging with the regulated financial sector, which is basically investors who have their own regulated platforms. And so we'll go into the detail of how and why to do that, or more reasons why you should do that and how to do that in a later video. The other thing I wanted to say was that, you know, the offshore industry, as you know, as we knew it, came to an end back in 2018 when the you know, automatic information exchange between governments, you know, with the OECD became real, and that is gaining momentum every day. And so what everyone has to realize is that because of this, it's you know, things have changed. The offshore industry, as you know it, where you could raise millions of dollars and just structure things kind of informally, that is less likely so now. A lot less likely so. Things have changed, especially if you're dealing with clients or investors who want to remain compliant, who want to keep their private banks on side and keep everything flowing, and no one wants to be unnecessarily flagged as high compliance, because the compliance department can bring your business to a halt. And so what you have to do is remember a number of things, which is when it's not just a matter of coming to the United States and just talking to anyone that you want to and then sending them promotional investment documents or emailing them investment documents directly. And no, in the United States, of course, there is a regulated environment, and again, that governs most and all in any raising of funds. If there is an exemption, you need to make sure you work with lawyers to make sure that you actually qualify for that. So rather than being entrepreneurial and forging ahead and thinking that you're winning because, you know, you're keeping things simple, what we find happens sometimes later on is that things become a little bit unraveled, and sometimes even investors end up with a not great result because, you know, they have done things in a somewhat non-compliant way, and the deal will come to a halt anyway. So when you're raising capital in the United States, make sure you understand the regulated environment. No, you have to know what finders are. Finders are basically the people who can, you know, who do all the networking, who can introduce you to potential investors and what have you. Certainly you can have discussions and talk to people, but when there's real interest and there's a real need to get into, you know, the investor has some interest and wants to receive documents or what have you, then in the United States, very quickly your finder should be handing over details to a licensed broker-dealer who will then issue and deal with all the paperwork that is needed for the investor to assess and consider and then eventually subscribe to the investment if he or she so wishes. These are very broad, high-level outlines, but, you know, just be aware of these kind of things, please. It's not just a matter of turning up here in Miami, heading down to South Beach, which is all very nice, and meeting lots and lots of people who are doing all kinds of different things and interesting, and then just investing, promoting investments to them. No, you need to keep in your mind that there are formalities that you would be best served if you recognize those formalities and make sure that you observe them, because at the end of the day, everyone is going to do what is best for them. And sometimes when investors get, when they're not certain, or when their compliance department starts to speak to them, then of course ultimately what you want is, or what you've got is a situation where everyone becomes a little bit uncomfortable, and then things kind of don't happen because um, you know because basically there's all this uncertainty, even though there was a compelling proposition and everyone was in favor of that. So that's it for now. I mean, we'll be posting more about fundraising in the United States. Again, I apologize to my friends and colleagues for whom this is vanilla and sort of actually almost very basic. But the truth is that there are a lot of people out there who, to be frank, look at things in a lot more straightforward, entrepreneurial ways, and unfortunately, that can lead to challenges and problems down the road. And certainly, it's we want to make sure that everyone can stay safe and keep on side, and go about this fundraising thing happily and safely. All right, that's it for now. Thank you.